agencies and the things that they do with us or for us. We wanted to provoke a bit of a conversation. We're not going to have kind of a Jerry Springer throwdown, but we do want to have a lively conversation about the roles that agencies play in this process for us, advising us on strategy. We purposefully invited Mark Fidelman to join us. Mark, come on up. He is social strategist for his company, Harmony, but he also writes a column twice weekly for Forbes,
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And so he's used to asking tough questions, and I will hand it over to Mark to introduce the panelists.
Well, why don't we bring the panelists up right now, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but I'm going to do something a little different in maintaining this hero theme, and that is to kind of give me your background and your superpower. So why don't we start with Jon?
Good God. All right, well, I'm Jon Bell, Global Managing Director of Social at Ogilvy, which is Ogilvy's social media business around the world. I think that one thing, just to frame up kind of my perspective and point of view about this, is that one of the things we care a lot about is integrated social media. You can take that a number of ways. One is, the triptych that we all kind of talk about a lot is owned, earned, and paid media working together, but practically speaking, not just talking about it. And the other is discipline or specialty integration. We're talking a lot today, we were just talking about this, about community. How much all of you probably focus on community, and the need to integrate that into all of the other touch points and communications that are going on. That's something we care about. We've also focused a lot on global markets here. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of the stuff we saw from Melissa was about US, but you know what? Our fastest growth markets out there right now, they're places, yes, they're Brazil and China, but they're Mexico and Turkey and the Philippines and Indonesia. So there's a lot going on out there. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll answer your question about the superpower, is this notion that I also am a firm believer that what I associate with social media, my world, which is about behaviors and technology that enable behaviors, can provide value to the business far beyond marketing and communications, right? And I think you guys know that in a lot of ways. I think, there's a couple ways to go with the superpower thing, right? You can go, I'm a big comic book fan.
It should be easy for you.
Yeah, right. My wife used to work for Neil Adams, which is one of the original Batman artists. But I actually am going to go the serious route to disappoint you, but it's empathy, right? So my superpower, I often lose it sometimes, to be frank, but I try to come back to it. And this whole thing we've talked about having empathy for the customer, I think sometimes we lose track of that in our desire to exploit the value, which is just maybe something we need to do, but it's horrible language to use, I think, for those of us who are also customers, which is pretty much everyone. So, anyhow, there's
empathy.
my answer.
Okay, excellent.
Sure. My name is Jon Borg-Breen. I am the Senior Vice President for Strategic Services at Acquity. Acquity is a brand e-commerce and digital marketing company. Been in business since 2001. Actually, just got a chance to ring the bell at New York Stock Exchange last Friday, so that was pretty exciting. Definitely want to add on some of the things that Jon was talking about. I think North America is definitely an interesting market for us, but even in the gamer numbers that we saw from Jan McGonigal, 311 million gamers in China is kind of interesting, yeah. Right? And so Acquity is definitely focused not necessarily just in North America, but also looking very much at what's happening in China. How is that different? How is Weibo and Taibo and Tencent and all of that stuff sort of resonating with some of the organizations as well that we deal with? As far as my superpower, I'd say patience, probably. I have a 2-year-old daughter that probably factors into that quite a bit. I think when people think about strategy, they think about the changes that are happening in the marketplace. They look at all of the new things that are always emerging, understanding exactly how those things fit into a broader concept. I think Jon was talking, and Chris was talking about this as well. There's interaction across the entire spectrum of a customer. How do you make sure that you're hitting the right spots? How are you making sure that you're really understanding exactly how to engage with those customers, making them the advocates that you really want? It takes a little bit of patience. It also takes the ability to sort of seize the opportunity, but I think patience is the part of
I would think that's a prerequisite to working with clients at a creative agency.
Absolutely.
And 2-year-olds.
And 2-year-olds.
And 2-year-olds. So Chris?
So I'm Chris Davey. I'm the Senior Vice President and Managing Director at SapientNitro, and I also am responsible for our global commerce practice. We're seeing a lot of the similar things to what John and John said. I mean, the reality is what we do is we really help our clients to not only define their brand, but really determine how they're going to target, which customers they're going to target, what they're going to communicate to that audience, and then ultimately how they're going to fulfill their brand promise through the experiences that they create for those clients. So, when we look at social technologies and community technologies and things like that, it's another way that people need to interact with folks in the places that they live and spend their time. And it's becoming a very complicated landscape for a lot of our clients as they have to deal with disruptive technologies from mobile to tablets to the emerging social media technologies. And so a lot of times our focus is on really helping people make kind of, help them unclutter the clutter, which they're now having to deal with on a regular basis. So, so with that as a backdrop, I was thinking that my superpower would be I would like to be able to predict the future.
I thought you were going to say X-ray vision when you're taking clothes off, but okay. All right, so I like to start off with a goal for this panel. I've sat through a lot of panels, and for me, what's interesting and what I like to put up front is really the goal for this panel is to identify both the successes and the lessons learned from working with creative agencies, but from their perspective as well. Not only what they've seen, but what they really talk about within their own organizations about their clients. So with that as kind of a backdrop, I'd like to get started. You guys ready? So the first question I have is, what advice should companies trust, or whose advice should companies trust? Let's start with John.
Whose advice should you trust? For me, I think that I put a lot of emphasis on someone who's actually not just a kind of a strategist in my space, but also a practitioner. We've learned a lot over the last 7 years, and it wasn't all by successful stories, to be frank with you. Not that there were any really negative ones, or that I would share them today. But it's such in my space, the social side of things, which is only one slice of what I think most people here are really kind of focused on. It's a very nascent world, right? And our ability to kind of plan predictive results for clients like Ford and Nestle and Unilever and others is really strengthened by the fact that we just did a program where we figured out how it works, right? We figured out how people respond to things and how we could interact with them. So I think looking for someone who actually has practical experience. The other thing, this is mundane. I mean, I also anyone who talks about business results and obviously ties it back to that. We were having a little side conversation about some of the old adages in our space. Don't trust people who are going to promise you a viral video, I think came up. And I think that's stuff you all know and have heard. A small thing, look at their deliverables. Yes, we're here to help you achieve business results. And of course, that matters most. Along the way, we're going to do some things that will get us down the road, and they will be deliverables. The conversation maps we create to pull out practical insights we can apply today is a thing, and that's why I make this little, like you can hold it. You should look at that stuff ahead of time and gain confidence that you understand how they do what they do.
Well, Chris, how do you get that portfolio? How do you begin to look at some of the things that creative agency has done to know whether they're competent or not?
Well, being a creative agency ourselves, we hopefully are competent in what we do. But I think it's true. I mean, I think that the level of sophistication in terms of how people think about customer experience in general for their customers, and the different ways that people want to interact with a brand, with a seller, with the different people that they interact with, I think is incredibly important. And so, mapping out those processes, developing the right set of tools to help bring to life and get alignment at an executive level around how you want to evolve your customer experience, I think is critical. And again, I look at a lot of the things that people are doing today through social technologies and other things, and I think it's important that it's all in context. These are all enablers to help foster a conversation and an authentic relationship that you're trying to create with your customers, and having a structured mechanism for how you think through all the different ways those things happen, and making sure that they're complete. And again, there's alignment around them, I think, is critical.
And Jon Borg-Breen, what are the top 3 things to look for when selecting a creative agency when maybe there's an issue around ethics, or maybe there's an issue around the professionalism of the firm? I mean, what are some things that you look for, or your customers should look for when deciding whether to select a creative agency or not?
Creative agents, sort of ethics. I would say, are they genuine people, right? I mean, I think that you're always trying to find people that understand your culture. If there's an agency that says we're going to make you just like Apple,
Not going to happen?
you're not going to happen, right? So I think an agency that understands and is core to the values of what your company is all about, and understanding that that's something that's important to them, I think is definitely something to take a look at. The other points about just deliverables, making sure that there is quality work that you've seen from those agencies is super critical to evaluate that. And I think there's also connection of team, right? So is there a resonance within the folks that you're actually doing work with day in and day out? Are they going to bring folks to you that are actually going to be on the projects, are going to be engaged with you? I think that the bait and switch is always something that our industry is famous for. And I think making sure that some of those things don't happen are absolutely critical, because it just sets the entire relationship off on the wrong foot. So making sure that that's sort of the consistency you get, I think, is super important.
So your firm wouldn't make a guarantee that the video of their clients would go viral, for instance?
No, we probably would no.
Okay. And if you hear that, you should run the other way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something to that?
No, I just wanted to comment. I think team is critical, and I think it's both the composition of the team, the culture that team brings, but it is the breadth of expertise as well. The problems we're trying to solve for clients now that involve a lot of these different technologies and platforms requires strategy expertise, business strategy expertise, marketing strategy expertise, understanding the brand, understanding the technology and how it all operates to support your mission, as well as customer insights. How do I get better information about the people that I'm targeting? So really thinking about the breadth of team and expertise that comes together to help you solve your critical problems, I think is really important.
I think there's one new really important skill that a lot of us are trying to get good at. And I'll lump it all up into behavioral economics, right? Really understanding what drives people's behavior. We're not trying to change attitudes. We're not trying to kind of change the way people think. We're trying to actually help them change what they do, right? And sometimes it's in service of a task or something they need to get done that's important in life. We're also business people, right? We're trying to get them to, to be crass, buy more, engage with spend more time with the brand, recommend the brand to friends. And it's about, behavioral economics is a messy business. It's not defined by click-through rates and stuff like that. It's about understanding psychology and science and research and applying it to our business. I think that's what excites me the most out there. I think it's also the most challenging to all of us. We're here talking with at a room full of kind of lithium experts and customers, and if we're not careful, we'll focus too much on what the platform can do versus what we want the people who are using the platform to do. And I know Lithium gets that, and you guys do as well, but I think it's more than a technology or a technique thing.
Okay.
And I think the thing that we haven't really talked about is that customer engagement is something that all of us have been talking about. There have been some great speakers about that. I think the other dimension is organizational adoption, right? Being able to truly fit into that. In the Forrester diagram, you have context and you have need and you got technology. Well, there's organization, there's process, there's all of the other pieces that come into play. And I think that an agency that doesn't understand the ramifications of a really good idea and how that's going to weigh on the organization, that's something that's always going to be a problem. So you set expectations. It's the guarantee of a video going viral, right? But it's even more systemic, because you're now creating a set of technology capabilities that can't be supported. They're not going to be connected to the rest of the organization. You've got corp communications that's doing something, marketing doing something else, e-business that's doing something else, and there's no view of customer as you start throwing more and more stuff in there.
Okay, great point. We're going to cover some of that a little bit later. Chris, what companies or brands out there that you know of that are really knocking out of the ballpark in terms of developing social initiatives and executing on them?
I think there's a few. one that I've always admired, although I don't have a bike myself. It's Harley Davidson, because they've actually, I mean, they've always had kind of community as part of who they are. It's kind of part of their corporate ethos.
Is their community connected?
Connected, yeah, oh, it's very connected. And the reality is they've also started to segment their communities much more effectively into different types of audiences as they look to expand their brand and expand the types of folks that they want to interact with. So I think they've done a really nice job of leveraging technology, certainly advocacy across their consumer base, and you know, and a really strong culture to cultivate, you know, a really strong sense of ownership around, you know, the brand and what makes it so special.
And what are their keys to success for engaging their community? I mean, it seems like I know I'm going back to the Hells Angels days, but today I know there's
Hells Angels days? I don't think so, dude. But go ahead.
I'm older than I look. But I know the new generation of Harley Davidson riders are more connected and more professional. But is there anything they're doing? Are there any keys to success that you could, you know, relay to the audience here that makes that program more successful than others? Say Kawasaki, for instance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the thing is that they're in their communities, their brand comes through, and also I think the way that they segment out. I mean, they obviously know that, you know, we're all getting older, and so their former audience is different than what their future audience needs to be. You know, it's really funny too. I have 3 kids, and just thinking about the auto industry. You know, my kids don't think about cars the way I used to think about cars. And so there is a behavioral thing going on in terms of how people relate to different things in the world differently than we did. And I think what they do is they try to identify some core target audiences that they will build energy around and build passion around, and then build kind of educational infrastructure to help those people feel comfortable. You know, so the community they set up around, you know, women riders, that's important because it's intimidating, you know, for some women to actually make that first step, to go into a Harley dealership. And so having a community that can support them through that process, I think is really important.
Okay. And Jon Borg-Breen?
I would say American Express, you know, I think that they do a nice job with social. They've got sort of the whole membership concept, and I think that they do that all the way from partners to actual cardholders with the open concept and everything else. You know, couponless sort of ads that they've got, accessibility to that, so there's some sort of monetization, but it's just this whole concept of membership. And everything that they do is all about that. I think they do a nice job.
And they've got a bunch of bloggers that are writing for free for them for small businesses. Is that,
correct.
Do they find that effective?
Yeah, I think, I don't know actually, you know, specifically, but I would say that, you know, our experience is a little bit more on the actual card services itself. From at least what I've seen, yeah, I think it does. It is effective.
The Open Initiative, which is their small business focus, which manifests itself in the Open Forum, the site that you're talking about, I think is hugely successful. I think they've figured out great ways to expand the services that they deliver to small business. So it's not just about, it's not just about communicating about the product. It's there to create a subject matter forum for the pains of being a small business owner. I mean, Small Business Saturday, one of the things that they were kind of credited with and took great advantage of was a tremendous program, rallying people to support the small businesses in their community. So I think it is hugely successful.
Okay.
I think another example that I would want to throw out into this mix is, you know, I think Ford has done a tremendous job, and we've been there along the way. So, but I'm telling you what I know, and that's what I want to give you as the insight from this. And so, you know, born from the pressures of, you know, the economic kind of turmoil from 3 or 4 years ago, came a certainty, a commitment on their part to talk and communicate with people differently, and to, you know, talk about the quality of the cars and all of that. And that's evolved over the years as done stuff like launching a vehicle on Facebook instead of at a car show, the Ford Explorer. But now where I see this heading and where they're going, which is I think really interesting to us in this group here, is how can you identify stakeholders, and I'll define what I mean by that, in your organization who are naturally predisposed to advocate on your behalf. And we're talking about employees, retirees, suppliers, dealers, car owners, I'm a car owner, enthusiasts, those of you who are enthusiasts of Mustang or something like that, they all have skin in the game in terms of the the value of the brand and how well the brand's doing. And so now they're implementing programs that go, I have to be careful here, more than Facebook. Sometimes when I say beyond Facebook, it sounds like I'm denigrating Facebook. It's not. That's an important platform. But if you think about how can I create a direct relationship with those stakeholders, build data on you, like a CRM system, okay, a CRM system, where I'm building a growing profile of what your interests are, what you care about, where you prefer to be communicated with, whether it be on Facebook or Twitter or in an email, and inviting those people to put a badge on their digital selves. So I have a badge that says I'm a car owner, and there's many others to choose from. I'm not an employee, I can't say I'm that, I'm not a retiree, but figuring out a way to engage those stakeholders on a always, it's 365 days a year, it's not about a campaign, it's about, getting them involved to a point where they advocate out and take advantage of everything that we've been talking about for the past couple of days. Rob started this thing about, most trusted source for purchase decision, tends to be someone I know, right? Friends, family, or potentially social connections, slightly less impactful. So I think where they're going is, they wouldn't put the label on it. I would call it social CRM, actually realized. And I think that's really exciting.
It's interesting, 2 observations real quickly. Ford was actually the first company to create a branded community. And it's not what you think. The first community they created were these Ford motor clubs in the 20s around the country that were helping each other find things like gasoline, of all things. Find places to get their Ford fixed. So it's interesting you mentioned Ford, because I've done the research, and I think they've almost probably created the first large-scale branded community. Second observation is you guys have brought up organizations that are hundreds of years old, right? Or at least 100 years old. There's nobody that you brought up that was new, a new technology company, for instance. So that's an interesting observation. Now I want to kind of move into, and starting with Chris, what are some of the things that you've seen that haven't gone well? And please you don't have to name names. You can if you want. But what are some of the initiatives, the social initiatives that haven't gone well, and some of the lessons learned from that?
Yeah, I think that I think there's 2 fundamental things that we've seen that have gone poorly. One is social initiatives that are underfunded. So people just not allocate. We've seen people come up with wonderful campaigns, and then when they hit the cutting room floor, and they never see the light of day. And that's hugely deflating to a lot of folks who have put in the time and the energy and passion, and really, have figured out how to connect with their audience in a unique way. I think the second thing is folks who actually start a conversation with their customers and then don't invest in continuing that conversation. That's the problem with a lot of what we're seeing today, is that once you start, you've got to continue. And it gets back to what I said earlier on, which is, there are now a whole set of things that people need to worry about in terms of the channels of communication that they have to orchestrate and manage on a regular basis. But once you start, and believe me, interacting through these types of medium is not actually going to decrease, it's actually going to increase. Yeah. So making an organizational investment in that. And I think the problem is that people have been struggling with ROI. How do I measure the ROI? At some level, it's a leap of faith. You've got to realize that this is happening, and you just need to actually support it.
So John, do you agree with Chris that you blame the client and not take personal responsibility?
Is that what he did? I don't think he did that.
No, I think that there are I guess, social campaigns that people do that aren't authentic to them. I think you have the Amy Winehouse Microsoft thing, which obviously didn't go very well. You've got Kenneth Cole with sort of tapping into some of the unrest with Cairo and all of that. I think trying to make sure that conversation that Chris is talking about is something that is authentic to an organization is super important, because you do have to continue that conversation. You just have to, right? And the investment that's there needs to be propagated and continued on. So I would add that, I guess, to...
You guys are just agreeing with one another. This is...
all right. I'll try to... I don't think this will be, unfortunately. I'll come up with something later that'll be controversial. The one thing I do want to add, though, is, beyond all the obvious flubs of how brands have kind of spoken poorly out in the social space and kind of been lambasted by it, One of the biggest trends that I see that worries me a lot is brands, well, I'll just call it settling for being there, right? So they're being there on Facebook, they're being there on YouTube, and even some of the biggest brands out there. So I think there's a data point, I'm probably misquoting a little bit, but by top 200 or 300 brands on Facebook and kind of measures of engagement, meaning people sharing, commenting, liking, and all of the things you can do that are qualified as engagement, going down by like 21 or 22% year on year. And the hypothesis, I don't think there's any direct conclusion, is that is this a bunch of brands kind of using it as a broadcast channel and not really not doing well, not doing it qualitatively well. And these are about some brands that have huge fan counts. So I think if we did a thing where we kind of looked at the quality of the conversation, the quality of the post, the quality of the engagement, the story arcs that they're involving people in Facebook, and from some major brands, and you just saw a lot of broadcast messages.
So why aren't
Here's a new product, here's a video, et cetera, and so forth.
Why aren't creative agencies educating those big brands
We are.
on?
We are.
And they're not listening, or?
It's not as binary as it's working or not working. We're in the process. We've been doing this for 7 years now. A lot of that has been education from day one all the way to now, and it's gotten better. There's a lot of progress. So I think there's a lot of rush right now. I mean, come on, we just saw the front page of our, the IPO has been announced. Yay! As if we didn't know that was coming. For Facebook, there's just a lot of rush onto that platform to do something on that platform, and people rush there, and now, you saw the headlines. You all know this just by being business people. There's going to be a huge amount of pressure for Facebook to justify that valuation, to prove out that it's worth it, right? And we're all there alongside them.
Well, Chris, you somehow got New Balance into the 21st century with the initiative around iPads in the stores. How were you able to convince them to do that? Because I find that fascinating.
Well, I mean, historically, we have, we've been talking about kiosk technology, digital technology in stores for a long time. In fact, we built the first kiosk for Staples back in the, it must have been the late 90s, where it was a PC with a box around it. And so the reality is, there's always been this desire to have different levels of engagement in a store environment that are linked to a variety of different things. One is save the sale. I mean, if I don't have it in stock, I don't want to let the person leave and go next door and buy it there. So how do I save the sale? The second thing is providing information to store associates who have a very high turnover rate that actually keeps them current and relevant in the conversation with customers in their stores. And then the third thing is basically providing a medium whereby people can interact with others. They can leverage other technology, they can view content that's relevant to the things they're trying to buy and get advice. And so when we actually framed it to them in that way, we said this is a multi-purpose tool that you can put in your environment, which is portable, that will allow you to carry on multiple types of different conversations with your customers in an environment where invariably you want them to be, and you actually want to drive conversion. So.
Did you get any pushback from them when you proposed this initiative?
Not really. No, I think a lot of folks have been